shut the door to keep the noise out, but you can knock if you need anything. Or just open it while you're heading.
All right, welcome everyone. This is a meeting of January 31st of the Baltimore County Delegation. We have a guest who speaks to us regularly with lots of openness. We've met with her at least 2 times, I think, during interim. And here she is again, because there's always stuff going on in Baltimore County schools, and we always need to know what's going on. And so with that, Superintendent Rogers, it's nice to have you with us today to do a presentation, and then we'll hold the floor for a couple of questions for you afterwards. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I do appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update, then open it up to any questions that you might have. And I think Ms. Siebel is going to pull up the presentation. I did come along with a few slides just to provide an update on where we are. As soon as the slides come up, here we go.
We've got them.
All right, I think we can move to the next slide, please. So just as a reminder, the work, our core purpose is teaching and learning, making sure that students are learning at high levels. And so for the last year and a half plus, we've really been focused on this through line to make sure that we have systemic and sustainable improvement across all 176 of our schools. Focusing on high quality instructional materials, making sure that our students have curriculum that is evidence-based, that is aligned to state standards, and that we have the full complement of services from central office leadership as well as school-based leadership to ensure fidelity of implementation, so we know what services and instructions our students are receiving on a regular basis. And so we have relaunched our efforts and really focused on professional learning, but not just professional learning in the traditional sense only for teachers. We included our paraprofessionals who provide direct instructional supports to our students, our leaders who meet on a monthly basis to engage in professional learning for themselves, and central office, including our operations side. When you have those two components, all of the research tells us that you need a mechanism to really evaluate and look at your data on a regular basis if you want to have an impact on the students that are in school. Gone are the days when we're looking at our tickler files and making plans for the next group of students. Our expectation and our structure is such that in every school we have professional learning communities. This allows teachers as well as paraprofessionals and leaders to come together on a regular basis to examine student work, to identify where there are gaps in student learning, and to make a plan to go back into the classroom the following day or the following week to address those specific gaps in learning. These collaborative cycles of inquiry and action, we think, are a strong part of the reason why we are seeing improvements in terms of our student achievement. But we only don't have this structure in the schools. We also have this structure in central office and on the operations side, so that we are consistently engaging in continuous improvement across the school system. As a result of our areas of focus, our priorities, specifically on academic achievement, infrastructure, making sure we have a climate that is safe for our students and our staff, and focusing on staff members, their level of training, making sure that we have highly effective teachers, leaders, and staff. For the first time in more than 12 years, we are seeing by all of the external measures, which are tested for validity and reliability, that Baltimore County Public School students are moving in the right direction. As I have shared with you very openly before, we have a lot of work to do. And we're not yet where we want to be, but it is very promising to see that when you're looking at the first indicator, which is most important and going to have an impact on everything else, chronic absenteeism. That last year we had the highest improvement in the state of Maryland, and continuing those efforts to make sure that students are in schools, because that's going to have an impact on everything else. You can see the other markers on the screen here. We've talked about them before. Everything from the measures of academic progress to the literacy performance of our students, the percentage of students reading on and above grade level, state assessment results in mathematics and ELA, and the Maryland Star ratings. But I did want to pause and look at teacher retention for a little bit, specifically in Baltimore County. We are outpacing the state. The last data that we had from the state last year was 89.3% retention. And we are outpacing our high pre-COVID, which was 93%. The national data in terms of teacher retention is only out up to 2022. We looked to see if there was anything out for 23, 24. It is not yet out from the United States Department of Education. And then our data from the state is from the Maryland State Board of Education, but Baltimore County Public Schools, looking at our teacher retention, is above 93%. And so we are very excited about what that means for students and the ability for the professional learning that we are investing in that we can deepen the level of skill and knowledge of our teacher workforce, so we can see that in terms of our student performance. Having a stable teacher workforce is incredibly important. We open schools more than 99% staffed. In terms of teachers, we haven't done that in a very long time, and we're very excited about what that means for our students. And so the next few slides will just provide you with an overview. These are slides that I've shared with our Board of Education this last week at our operating budget work session of the Baltimore County Public Schools operating budget. Specifically, the two funds, as you know, that really focus on day-to-day spending. All of our staffing, our operations are the general fund and special revenue fund. Special revenues, grant sources, and the general fund, which include state, federal, and local funding. The proposed difference is $126 million. It's a 6.5% increase. In a few slides, I'll remind you the components of that increase, bringing the operating budget subtotal from 2.1 million to 2.26 million. I will call your attention to the internal service, debt service, and enterprise fund that we report on annually, as well as the capital projects. The next slide details the capital project asks, just as a quick reminder, between of the local and the state requests that we've made, and what the major projects that are planned for the next 5 years. So this slide shows the exhibits that we had for our county capital budget request in priority order, as well as our state capital budget request, both board approved. Just for historical purposes, we'll see on this slide the request amounts on the even years, which also happen to be the years where there's the bond referendum, and itemizing the projects for the next 5 years. This year, there was the question that I believe about 400,000 Baltimore County residents, about 80% of them voted yes to the bond referendum to build new schools in Baltimore County Public Schools. It is unprecedented. We have never in our history, other than when we first built our schools, built 3 high schools at one time. The major projects that are accounting for or contributing to the $541 million, as a reminder, are Delaney High School, $281 million, Towson High School, $260 million, Lansdowne High School, $204.7 million, and we also have Scotts Branch Elementary School, School and Deer Park Elementary School that are slated as our next group of projects. Also added for context, the Built to Learn Act funds poured in an additional $350 million into our school infrastructure since 2021, and those funds are coming to an end. And as you know, we have the third oldest infrastructure in terms of school buildings in the state of Maryland. And the 15-year plan, the multi-year My IPASS plan, details what steps we need to take and which schools we need to engage in renovation and rebuilds, as well as other capital projects that are necessary to continue moving forward to meet the needs of our students. With such a large budget ask, I think it was important to make sure that our community was clear on steps that we have taken to ensure that we are fiscally responsible and that we are bringing as many savings forward as possible. On this slide, you'll see that throughout this year, we engage in zero-based budgeting again for a second year in a row. We've had a central office hiring freeze for the majority of the school year, with very little exception only to essential positions. We have budgeted to actual expenditures and required documentation to do that, maximized our grant funding, and our philanthropic efforts, reduced redundancies and increased efficiencies over the last 2 years. This has resulted in $130 million worth of reductions that we've made internally. With the state proposed budget, this slide shows the potential impact to our school system. It's a slide that I shared with our general public and the Board of Education this week, based on the fiscal note that we received last week. For Baltimore County Public Schools, state aid would be reduced by $5.6 million. The other state revenue, which is primarily non-public placement, another $4.8 million, as well as the additional required state retirement contribution, having 20,000 employees, $9.4 million, for a total impact of approximately $20 million to Baltimore County Public Schools. We have shared this in detail when I presented the budget, as well as a reminder during the work session, but want to call to everyone's attention. You saw on that slide $126 million worth of change from last fiscal year to this upcoming fiscal year. $26 million we are able to take care of with internal savings. The $100 million that we have requested to local is based on these 5 major components. Our year 2 compensation agreements for our unions that touches all 20,000 employees. Our carryover that we were able to use ESSER funds to cover for the extended school day. As you recall, we had the shortest school day in the state of Maryland, as well as compensating our substitutes and contractual employees an additional 4 hours, which have allowed us to fill our additional adult assistance positions in our schools that work directly with our students needing special education services and substitute teachers. Special education, budgeting to the actual expenditures. I testified this week in front of the education subcommittee that across the state of Maryland, we have more than $1 billion that is not budgeted for, that school systems spend on special education. For us, because we have a budget that is now very tight, there's not a lot of flex. It is based on actual expenditures. We don't have the flex available to cover additional costs. And so the $23.2 million represents budgeting to actuals for our related service providers, which means speech language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, as well as the non-public placements. accounting for the last year's legislation that allowed for parity between teacher pay in non-public schools and public schools, as well as additional paraprofessional special education teachers for regional programs. That cost is $23.2 million. The benefits that come along with the compensation are a total of $14.1 million. And I have shared before, school systems, at least Baltimore County Public Schools, will have a 29% price increase this upcoming school year for a total of $9.8 million additional in our gas and electric bill. So this totals more than $100 million, but we have the savings, the internal savings to offset that. And so those are the recent updates that I wanted to provide to everyone, and turn it over to you for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. We certainly appreciate you being here today. Some of those slides had some very important but very tiny numbers for us. And so some people like to really drill down. In fact, we all do, I will say, and look at them carefully. So you don't have to send, if somebody on the staff would just send it to John Sanic, which is the BCOD address, which is the one that he used to communicate with you to set up this appointment, that he will distribute it to the entire delegation so that they can study it, study some of those great figures that were in there. So I appreciate that, and we'll make sure that gets done. I have a couple of hands up, and so we'll go to the first one I see, which is Delegate Ruth. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Rogers, for the presentation and for all your work. And obviously, these are difficult times, and it seems like you're really doing a great job, and especially the absenteeism improvement and the teacher retention. Congratulations on all of that. I wanted to change topics for a minute and ask, I know that you sent out an email about immigration and immigrants, and there's a lot of concern about that. And I know that BCPS is following the MSDE guidelines, but I see the guidelines as sort of a baseline, and just wanted to ask if BCPS has policies and or guidance that they're issuing to front office staff. Obviously, we don't want to break the law. We don't want to ask anybody to break the law, but we also expect ICE to follow the laws when they come to our schools, because we are a nation of laws and everybody has to follow the laws. So is BCPS working on guidance for front office staff on how to handle those encounters, what the Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights are, what are public and private spaces, what kind of warrant is needed, et cetera?
So in the Maryland State Department of Education regulation, there is very specific information in there for front office staff. It tells them what they're supposed to do if someone comes to the school. But beyond that, we absolutely have policies when people come into our buildings. We would never just turn over students to any adult. So there's the Raptor service where people have to come in, to prove who they are. And we have an office of safety and security where there are specific protocols that people have to follow when they're requesting access to students. And so we're going to continue to follow those specific protocols to ensure the safety of everyone involved, and adult students. And as you stated, we are going to comply with the law, but we're going to do it in a safe way. We're going to follow our existing policies, and the Maryland state guidance does have specific guidance in there regarding what front office staff in any building should do, whether there are students in the building or, it's a school office.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Delegate, and thank you, Dr. Rogers. Delegate Pasteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for this presentation. I know you have a lot on your plate trying to juggle all of the budgets, both budgets, and making sure that folks are clear that that capital budget is tight and doing what it is supposed to be doing, and that you're being very prescriptive about that. And I appreciate that, because sometimes that gets lost or it gets confused. So thank you for for cleaning that up for us and explaining it. And thank you on one of the last slides, the inclusion of special education, because I love talking special education. And I know you were limited in terms of time, so I agree with Delegate Ebersol that we would like to be able to see that and to put it in, if you will, when you send us that, the context and a slower version so we can really figure it out. But can you just give us the short version of what was it, 23 million plus, where that really is going to drop down, because we want to make sure that as we're dealing on our side and you're dealing on your side, that we're not shortchanging our special needs students at all. So can you just very briefly just give what that breakdown is, and then of course we'll get more specifics later.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going off of memory. I think it will serve me well, but I might get one number that's not altogether accurate. But we will follow up in writing, as we always do. We're going to send this PowerPoint to you to make sure that you have that information. So for special education, in terms of new positions, we are looking for 32 new positions. We have our students that we partner with CCBC that are in the FALS program in our Northeast and I believe it's our Northwest area. Two of our programs, we need an additional teacher for FALS for that. So that's part of it. We also have pre-kindergarten special education, where I believe it's 5, that we need 5 teachers for pre-kindergarten special education to meet the needs of our students. Additionally, 25 additional para-educators to serve along the continuum. And then there is a little more than $8 million that allows us to compensate all of our additional adult assistants that work directly with students receiving special education services, for them to be able to work the full school day, the amount that we were able to carry over using ESSER funds this year, as well as the $4 additional compensation. Years ago, those were positions, and we have about 1,500 of them. Those were positions where many schools were unable to fill them. For the last few years, since we've been able to add the $4 additional, those positions are filled in our schools. And so we're providing direct services to our students. The other $13 million in that $23 million, $23.2 million ask, $4 million, I believe these numbers are correct, $4 million is for related providers for our school. That's speech language providers, that's speech language pathologists, it's occupational therapy, it's physical therapy, and then the $9 million that remains is for non-public placements. Last year, that legislation said that there was parity between the amount that a non-public placement teacher makes and the school, the public school teacher. We are at $60,000 and above for a starting teacher. So the tuition went up significantly for Baltimore County public schools. And so the difference between budget and actual expenditure was $9 million. And we know that's still a moving target. But if you add to that the proposed cut of almost $5 million to those funds, the $9 million immediately is not enough to cover the needs of the students. We know that there will be another $5 million that we'll have to account for if that went forward as proposed. But roughly, those are all the right components. I think the numbers are spot on, but I will confirm in the information that we follow
I think you did an awesome job pulling that off the top of your head, and I appreciate you're even taxing your brain. That's youth for you, taxing your brain to even do that, because that is important. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I was going to comment on your ability to pivot to them as well. Thank you, Delegate Pastor. Delegate Naraki.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Dr. Rogers, thanks for joining us. Always appreciate all these discussions and excited to hear about those chronic absenteeism numbers, but I do want to talk about those a little bit more. But I'm very excited to hear that they're going in a positive trend. Also want to thank your team for getting my office kind of access to what schools look like on an individual basis, which I think is really important for us to kind of sometimes drill down on a granular level. And we've ran the whole all of my district, kind of the schools that serve either that are in or serve students from my district. And I just want to highlight a couple, but they're all kind of in a similar pattern, which kind of worries me a little bit. So Chesapeake High School, 58.3% chronic absenteeism. Stemmers Run Middle School, 44.5% absenteeism. And then finally, this one just blew me out of the water. Hawthorne Elementary School, 63.5% chronic absenteeism. And that's good that they're going in the positive direction, but I just want to know kind of a little bit more what we're doing and how we can help to further drive those numbers down, because that number just blew me out of the water, that 63.5% number at Hawthorne.
Well, I appreciate the question and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about how we can partner on this. I would call your attention to look at McCormick Elementary School, look at what their numbers were, and in 1 year, how they got it below 10%. Really, when you're talking about elementary schools, you're talking about adult decisions on behalf of students. It's decisions, to keep the students at home. And so being part of the community schools provider network, we have a community schools facilitator that works directly with parents. We provide incentives. Sometimes students are missing school because of necessities that they don't have access to. So we provide all those necessities, whether it's clothing, it's coats, alarm clocks to help them wake up if they have to wake up on their own. We have piloted phone calls, direct phone calls in the morning, an additional bus run to go and pick up students that have missed the bus. We have a subset of schools where this year is year 2 of our chronic absenteeism central offices, as well as individual school plans. But there is an additional work, and the schools that you mentioned are a part of it, where we have individual mentors that are focused on attendance, so that it's granular work with the families, with the students. So it's almost the reverse when you're looking at high school, the approaches that you take as opposed to elementary school. It's really about working with the families in elementary and high schools. It's really about having those direct conversations with the students who, parents are trusting them to leave and to come to school. Really looking to identify what those barriers might be, providing services to families, but how you can help is to get the message out about how important it is for students to be in school above everything else. That's why we're providing interpretation services. That's why in our community schools, we have access to healthcare on site. Many times people are leaving and students are serving to provide those services. There's providing childcare. So we're connecting families with resources for childcare. So getting the message out how important it is to be in school, and that schools have access to help families with some of the other situations that cause them to sometimes make the decision that students need to stay at home. Providing that health care, I think, is the key to addressing things like that. And I point out McCormick Elementary Schools, because elementary school under the leadership of Principal Cortez, because they doubled down on that. Their numbers were astronomical. And in 1 year, this intentional focus and really providing those wraparound services not only reduced it to below 10%, but as a result, students were in school, they were learning, and they moved up, the only school in our system, and I'm not sure if they're the only school in the state, that moved up 2 stars from a 2-star school to a 4-star school in 1 year. So it definitely can be done, but anything you can do to help parents and families to understand, contact the school. We have resources, and students, no matter what, need to be in school unless they are ill. And if they are, we have home and hospital services and other programs to help support those students. So it's not counting against attendance. I think it's going to be incredibly helpful.
Yes, ma'am. No, and I appreciate that. And certainly we would love to, Delegate Schlegel and I'm sure some of my other colleagues, because that's a school that wraps around several districts. I'm sure would love to follow up with your office about how we can further partner. I've already talked to the county executive's office as well about that one in particular, just because it's so that number is just so staggering to me that we got to do something with that one in particular. They're all kind of in a pattern, and that one of our schools was like even higher outside of that pattern.
Absolutely, absolutely. So happy to have those follow-up conversations. Some people have even recorded phone calls and sent them out to their constituents, encouraging, families to make sure the students are going to school. We have local pediatricians sending those messages, recording little video snippets that we can send out on your behalf to your families. We're happy to partner in that way because many others have, and it's made a difference hearing the same message from a variety of people.
That sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Rogers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Rocky. Appreciate you highlighting that outlier, which needs attention. Attendance is critical. Delegate Cardin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for coming and for your presentation, which was fabulous. As you did so much, gave us so much information in such a short period of time. I hope that our students are going to be as efficient and effective because of all your hard work. So that's great. And I also wanted to, I saw you yesterday briefly as you're walking the halls of Annapolis. And from that time that I saw you, reminded me, and I know that you gave us sort of a 30,000-foot perspective and some really good information and exciting news, which I'm really happy about. But I'm going to drone down on my little issue that Tony Bazemore's been wonderful in communicating with me. But I just want to make sure I have it on the record publicly that I'm still getting calls from particularly Pikesville Senior and Pikesville Junior parents, but also from Towson and Delaney, just a couple, that kids are upset that they are not permitted to use the bathrooms are locked during the day. And I just think this is for everything that you're doing in terms of public health and keeping the mental health of both teachers and students on your agenda, it seems as if there's got to be a better way of stopping bad behavior in bathrooms than locking them during the days. It concerns me that is a culture that we should not tolerate. And I just wanted to put that out there publicly because I'm going to continue to get these calls from people saying that their kids are not able to use the facilities for, women for issues having to deal with, menstruation, for bathroom purposes, because you're sick and you need to use the bathroom for that. And I'm getting calls for all of them, and I'm just letting you know. And I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. I can tell you that we have communicated clearly to our executive directors of schools as well as principals, and it's really so. Just for the viewing public, all bathrooms are not locked all days. I think that principals have been diligent in trying to identify certain locations in their buildings where there is not proper supervision and trying to limit access during certain period of the day for safety reasons. So I think there's always an opportunity to make sure that there's more clear communication to families, so families understand what the decisions are, and clear communication about what is open, what those locations are that all students can access throughout the day. And so I will certainly take that message back in particular to those 5 principals so that people have information about what is open, where, what are the locations that might not be open. I can tell you as a former high school principal, there was, I don't know what the builders were thinking about, but there was a hall all the way in the back and there was one restroom there. That was the restroom that we turned into a staff only restroom because it was an unsafe place for students to be.
And I appreciate it. I know this isn't a major, I just want to make sure you know that it's still an issue. Yeah. And I'll continue to work with Tony on it, but thank you very much.
Absolutely. I appreciate the continued partnership. And then we'll just ask principals to reshare. So thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cardin. Delegate Schlegel. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you. Sorry, it wouldn't unclick.
happens.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, for being here. You know, we had some discussion earlier from Delegate Ruth about ICE, and I just want, as part of our job as lawmakers, is to set the record straight and not and come out against fake news. There is an article in the Baltimore Sun from yesterday. I would point you all to read that, where the ICE director, Elliston, is quoted. And he said, ICE would never enter a school to target children. So that is not happening. He said, quote, "We have not been in any schools. We have not targeted any children. It is the most wild misconception I've heard in my almost 20 years in this job," Elliston replied. "I'm on the phone with county executives and legislators asking questions because it's what they're being told. I got forwarded an email from one of our county executives alleging that we were on an elementary school campus interviewing children. We weren't even in that county that day. So ICE is not raiding schools. And you know, the only reason in this article, he said that they would go in a school if it was, for instance, that Howard High School student who was an American citizen, who had an ankle monitor on, who was accused of murder. The police went in, not ICE, and apprehended that young man. So, you know, they are not targeting schools. They are only targeting violent criminals, pedophiles, sex offenders, gang members, and violent criminals, adults. And if there are any children, like the young man who killed Kayla Hamilton, who attended Lansdowne High School, any apprehension like that should be allowed, and it would be safe. So, you know, I hope that we can tamp down some of these false rumors and assure our communities across the county that ICE is not going into schools, surrounding schools, targeting children. That is not going on.
Thank you, Delegate Schlegel. That wasn't a question, so I'm going to move on to Delegate Phillips.
Let me come off mute. And this is actually going to be a follow-up to Delegate Chalega. And it's not so much whether they've done it or not. I am curious, and it's only been 11 days, are there any trends of impact on absenteeism in any of our schools because of some of the chaos that we're all hearing? And is there any communication to those families to help reduce that chaos, as Delegate Chalega has mentioned? But have we seen any trends? That was really my question. And that follows up with the conversation that I had with the police chief earlier this week as well.
So I can't, I can't say that we've seen any trends. Anytime any student is absent, we have a protocol where we reach out to the families by phone call, as well as for all families that we have emails, they receive an email indicating, where we flag that there's an attendance concern. We certainly know that whether it is the perception or reality, that people are making decisions about attendance, even if it's until they find out information one way or another. And so I can tell you that we have reached out to the State Department of Education to talk about that and what the impact might be on chronic absenteeism. There are definitely students and families who are concerned and making decisions that for some of them, they'll wait and find out whether or not they're going to come to school. But we reach out to every student, every family that's absent, no matter what. The guidance that we've sent out, we sent it out to our entire community. There are a list of resources that came out from the State Department of Education in multiple languages for families to access and use as needed. And so it's definitely something that is on our mind. It's something that we've reached out to talk about to across the state, and it's something that we'll be closely monitoring.
If I could, Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
follow up on that. And thank you so much, Dr. Rogers. You really are on top of a lot of different things, so we appreciate that. Is there a coordinated conversation taking place with police, with the county executive's office? How is that working in terms of communicating with families?
So we are in the unique position that we have very strong partnerships across both of those agencies that you've just spoken about. And so we have regular communication with the police department, as well as the county executive's office. Our brand new CE, Klossmeyer, I think she's been here for 2 weeks and we've already had 2 meetings. So it's, regular meetings weekly to make sure that we're on the same page and we're sharing information. And so I think there are no gaps in communication there. Chief and myself speak on a regular basis. So if there were any question, any concern, I would reach out directly, as well as I have Director Elliston's direct cell phone number, and I would reach out and have reached out directly to inquire about, if there were any questions, any concerns. He's been quite responsive. He also briefed all superintendents across the state last week in terms of, what their approach was moving forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, delegates, for your questions and comments. I will say, Dr. Rogers, I appreciate that you guys issued guidance. My understanding is you might have been the first county in the state to at least let people know that you were on this issue. I will point out that I appreciate Delegate Szeliga reading a comment from the ICE officer, and I'm comforted by that. One of the issues that comes up with ICE is police cooperation with ICE. And we are looking carefully at how local police might be cooperating with them. Specifically, and this is something I'm looking at, school resource officers who are already in the building, and we're somewhat we're examining that. We're not putting up any giant red flags. We're not trying to cause a panic here, but we are concerned. The administration in Washington has a different approach to treatment of immigrants, and there are some children of immigrants are in our schools. So, with that, I appreciate you coming. I'm so pleased. Everybody seems quite enamored with your ability to pivot from subject to subject. In the old days, we'd have called it a good Rolodex, but now it's really probably finding the correct file up here. And I appreciate that you came on board. And thank you to your staff for helping out as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to our next opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your openness. All right. With that, we're going to move on to the single piece of business we have today. This is House Bill 335, which is a nuisance actions bill. I'm sorry I don't have the title right in front of me, but I could if I lowered my my Zoom a little bit. We heard this bill last week. This bill was taken up by the Community Affairs Subcommittee, which is chaired by Delegate Ruth. Delegate Ruth, do you have a report from the subcommittee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the bill HB 335 the title is Baltimore County Nuisance Actions Community Association, and it's sponsored by Delegate Grammer. We have this delegation has supported this bill the past, I believe, 2 years. The subcommittee met and we did vote to recommend favorable support. Should I make a motion at this time?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. So I move that the delegation support this bill favorable.
And I second.
And I have a second. Thank you. And that's from the committee also. I appreciate that.
Can I, who made the second, please?
The second was
Delegate Allen.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This bill did pass unanimously last year in this group, and although some changes are pending, we have no changes to the delegation at this time. So I'm willing to take comments on the bill before we take a vote. But if we do vote without objection, I believe I will take the vote by voice. Are there any comments or questions on the bill at this time? Any debate? Okay, seeing none, If you are in favor of a favorable report on this bill as moved, please raise your hand or say aye. I see
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Any objections should put their hand up. I don't know why my hand is up. That's terrible. Should take your hands down. If anybody has an objection, they should speak or put their hand up now. Okay, and I'm not to be counted among them. I don't know how mine went up. All right, so the delegation approves this bill for favorable report unanimously. We will forward it to the appropriate committee, and we will change the sponsor name to Baltimore County Delegation by amendment.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, I think that concludes our business. I have a couple of quick notes. Most of you have seen in the mail that we're going to try to kick the tires on our room because we haven't used it in a while. I'm planning on in-person delegation meetings just to see how we feel about it. We have guests that are willing to come on February 14th and February 28th. We'll meet at 9 o'clock. That's the plan right now. If you haven't ever been to the room or haven't noticed it as you walked by, the room is room 180, and it's in the other direction from the elevators on the first floor from the Prince George's County room and the Baltimore City room, and it has our name prominently written over top. We will have nameplates out for where people should sit when you arrive. They should stay in the places they are. I get to pick that out. And I think that will be it for, the question came, I'm sorry, the question came about people who wanted to testify, would they have to come in person? Yes, we do not have the capability of running a hybrid meeting. And so we will broadcast this meeting, probably not on the DLS site, but probably on Facebook Live somewhere or some social media live where people can watch as they do here. But we will make sure that that is publicized clearly in the notes and in the agenda that we post on the DLS website. We can see if we like it. This is really just to try it out and see how it feels a couple of times this year. And then in the interim, we can discuss how we feel about going forward. Or if we really love it, we can squeeze another one in March. But let's plan on these two as being in person at this time, February 14th and February 28th. All right, that's just a mic on. Thank you. I have no other business. Does anybody else have anything else for the good of the order? Okay, seeing none, I move to adjourn this meeting, and I will see you all next week. We're still online next week. I will see you here. We'll plan on 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.